When I posted my video on Reforger Update 1.5 a few weeks ago, I was not expecting to be talking about 1.6 anytime soon. But here we are, before 1.5 has even been released, we now have 1.6 on the experimental build, and this one is massive for some obvious reasons. We have the new official map Kolgaev, an official campaign, projectiles now being affected by wind, and a bunch of new assets and fixes. But this update is truly monumental for a few reasons you may not have considered. So today, we will take a look at what is coming in the update, how these things will change the game, and why I believe this may be Reforger's most important update yet. We will kick things off with the obvious one, Kolgaev. Video doesn't really do this map justice. When I first seen it, I was not that impressed, but the second I played on it, I knew this map was something special. This place is dripping with dreary Soviet-era vibes, has a bunch of really interesting POIs, and unlike Evron or Arland, it looks like an active war zone, which is something I always felt was missing with the other two maps. But there is more to Kolgaev than just the map you see here. All these new map assets, from destroyed buildings to industrial infrastructure and even new trenches that actually have curved sections, thank God, will now be available to map modders. And you can bet that in the near future, we will see a flood of new maps using these high quality new assets in all kinds of creative ways. This map will no doubt be a welcome refresher to the large community of people who love the game in its vanilla form and have been restricted to Evron and Arland for years now. And although it seems that people are not really leaning into the new HQ Commander mode as much as I would have liked, from what I've experienced it has brought about some level of increased cohesion and teamwork. In my opinion, all the vanilla game desperately needs now is 128 player servers, because you really notice a drop in intensity coming from modded to vanilla and only having half the amount of people on the map. In addition to the new map, we have a handful of other in-game assets, including face paint camo for special forces units, camo and wrapped versions of the M21 and ART-2 scopes, sights for the commander seat in the LAV-25, and Soviet naval infantry units, groups and equipment. This next addition is probably the most important in my opinion. Now, the term milsim kinda gets used pretty loosely since Reforger blew up. It's somewhat of a buzzword. A game featuring characters in military uniforms pretty much instantly gets the milsim label slapped on it. But just a couple of years ago, this definitely wasn't the case. Even Karmakut's KC Liberation on Arma 3 would get referred to as chillsim, not milsim. But for the average Reforger player, KC Liberation would absolutely be the most milsim-like FPS experience they have ever had. What I'm getting at here is that the addition of projectiles now being affected by wind in Arma Reforger is a massive step in the right direction for all us old realism junkies, many of which would likely say that such a feature was a prerequisite of a game even being referred to as milsim in the first place. What kind of blows my mind is that I have already seen people complaining about this addition making the game too hard, which really highlights the gap between the old Arma 3 crowd and the new, largely console-fearing Reforger player base, and makes me want to shout from the rooftops about how fun and rewarding a true milsim experience can be. But I'm probably already getting off track here, so let's just take a look at some examples to maybe reassure some of you guys that are unsure about this change that most of the time the wind speed and engagement distance is not going to be great enough for this stuff to really come into play, at least not to a degree that is going to make the game considerably harder. Okay, so this is actually pretty interesting. I've got the wind speed set to 15 meters per second here, which is the fastest the game will allow, and this is obviously the RPG-7. Now we take a shot and it is deviated by probably close to 10 meters, alright? And then here we have shot, obviously these are 5.56 rounds, and not much compensation is required. This is at a range of approximately 350 meters, so kind of the outer extent of an average firefight. You know, most firefights are gonna happen within this range, most likely less than. So you don't have to compensate much with 5.56 rounds. Obviously the RPG, massive deviation. We now have the wind speed at 7.5 meters per second, and a shot with the RPG is, as you'll see, is still heavily deviated by the wind. Okay, so we're still off, it still pushes it off by, I don't know, 5 to 7 odd meters. And here we have the RPG-22, and this is where it gets strange, because the round from the RPG-7 and the RPG-22 aren't that different as far as, just from a visual standpoint, as far as aerodynamics go. And as you can see there, we hit the target and almost zero deviation. Now keep in mind this is experimental, so all of this is subject to change, but it's kind of strange because, as I said, visually the rounds, even from the lore, visually they're not that much different. And from the quick amount of research I did, the muzzle velocity on all of them is very similar as well. So I'm not actually sure if there's something not quite right here, or if there is a reason behind it. Sometimes the devs have commented on my videos, so if one of you is watching, it'd be interesting to know. But here, obviously, very little compensation required at 350 meters with 5.56. And now we're at 3.5 meters per second. And you'll see here, this round actually hits the target, but it is still deviated a little bit. And as you can imagine, obviously the RPG-22 did not deviate at all, or the lore for that matter, at 3.5 meters per second. So I can understand a little bit of concern about the RPG-7, but obviously this is kind of the outer extent of the range that most firefights, whether it's with rifles or with anti-tank engagements.
Soviet forces on Golgiev pose a serious threat to Atlantic activity.
The addition of a single-player campaign is probably the most consistently requested thing I see in my comments and comments on other videos, and, well, now we have one. Don't worry, there won't be any spoilers here. The campaign sees you play as Callsign Mojo, a US Special Forces operative, and has you carry out a range of missions on the island of Golgiev that will test your tactical prowess from stealth to navigation, while showing off some of the island's coolest locations, and it genuinely is a lot of fun. To be perfectly transparent, after the first 2 missions I was a little worried. They are quite easy and don't have a lot of action, but I reminded myself that not everyone is going to be coming into this campaign with thousands of hours of Arma gameplay under their belt, and by the 3rd mission the intensity really picks up and it is honestly a lot of fun. This really is an important addition for Reforger. I know single player is kind of looked down upon by a lot of the younger guys these days, and a large chunk of the Reforger player base has probably never taken part in a PvE milsim op in the past, but historically, milsim is PvE. I remember seeing a poll a couple of years ago, I can't remember whose post it was, but it was asking what people thought of when they heard the term milsim, PvE or PvP, and the results were overwhelmingly in favour of PvE. Now this isn't me just yapping because I can't let go of the past and I'm all nostalgic for PvE. This genuinely is a really important aspect of the Arma franchise, and PvE and things like Arma 3's Eden editor and the ability to create pretty much whatever military scenario you can dream up is the reason a game like Arma 3 is still relevant more than 10 years after its release, and games like COD have to release a new game every year. I get it, the intensity of PvP is addictive, and taking out a bot is never going to have the same sense of intensity and satisfaction as schwacking a real life player, but the difference is depth. A well-created PvE milsim scenario is unlike any gaming experience you have had in your life, and the teamwork and storytelling aspect will stick in your mind for years. I still have memories of playing KC Liberation on Arma 3 on one of their Vietnam campaigns. Pitch black, no MVGs, and we get ambushed by VC and my entire squad gets taken out. I was left wandering in the dark using the stars to navigate, or at least know I wasn't walking in circles, and after 30 minutes I randomly ran into the platoon leader who was on his way to rendezvous with the guys. That was years ago and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I don't even remember the last kill I got in PvP conflict, and it literally was yesterday. That is enough yapping from me, I think you get my point, but I highly recommend checking out the new single player campaign. I know people will ask, but I'm not sure when this update is due to release, but I'm sure it won't be too long. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you subscribed. I often make videos like this one and also do some gameplay stuff on a range of different tactical shooters. I'm Raiden, thanks for watching.